My name's Walt Kelly, and I've been sitting on this story about a remote lighthouse off the Oregon coast for nigh on 35 years now. Figured it's time to let it loose like a bad smell at a Sunday picnic, probably. The lighthouse. The widow's tooth, some of the old-timers called it. And she'd earned it, they said. More storms rolled over that rock than you've had hot dinners. Old-timers used to say the place was cursed, that the souls of shipwrecked sailors was trapped in the lantern room, forever watching for a shore they could never reach. Just stories mostly. Keeps the tourists interested though. Worked that life for 12 years, I did. Seen every kind of weather the Pacific could throw, every kind of boat that dared to come close. You learn to read the water out there, know the sound of a trawler from a sailboat a mile off. Seen things you wouldn't believe, mostly just the ocean being the ocean, mind you. But this was different. It was a night just like any other in late fall. The kind where the wind howled like a banshee lost in a barrel, and the waves crashed high enough to spit water right up onto the lantern room. Couldn't see nothing but white fury out there. Radar was spitting and crackling, picking up nothing but the storm itself, and I figured that was that. You get used to the loneliness out there, the constant roar of the sea your only company. You settle into a rhythm, check in the lamp, the gauges, making sure Widow's Tooth was doing her job, warning folks away from the teeth of that rock. Then, clear as a bell over the roar, I heard it. A knock. Not a bang from the wind. Nothing like that. A proper knock. Like someone standing there, polite as you please, in the middle of Armageddon. Figured it was the wind playing tricks, but then it came again. 3 sharp raps. No boat could have made it close that night without me seeing it, hearing it. And even if they did, they'd be clinging to life. Not standing there knocking like they was expecting tea and biscuits. I went down the wind-in stairs, heart thumping a little faster than usual. Bolted the heavy door open, and there they was. A fella, his wife, and 2 young uns, huddled together. Seemed normal enough at first glance. Except they was dry, bone dry, like they just stepped out of their parlor on a sunny afternoon. Their clothes looked like wool but felt papery almost. Rain usually soaks things. And their hair, the rain should have plastered it to their heads, but it was dry, like it hadn't even been near water. "Lost, are you?" I asked, the wind trying to rip the words from my mouth. The fella, he had a thin mustache and a nervous look, just nodded. "Storm caught us out," he said, his voice barely a whisper against the wind. The wife, she had her arm around a little girl, maybe 6 or 7, and the boy, a couple years older, was holding onto his daddy's coat. "No boat," I said, looking past him into the storm. "Ain't seen no boats all night." The fella just shrugged, a weak little shrug that didn't explain nothing. "I wasn't born yesterday. You don't just appear on a rock in the middle of the ocean during a gale." "Come on in," I said, more out of habit than anything. Couldn't leave folks out in that. They stepped inside, and the wind seemed to sigh now that the door was shut. They dripped nothing on the floor, not a single drop. I just mopped the floor that afternoon, the linoleum still a bit slick. They stepped inside, and nothing, not a bead of water. I remember thinking I needed to check the desiccant in the lamp housing later, keep the moisture out. But that dryness, it wasn't right. "Coffee," I offered, pointing to the pot always brewing on the stove. Strong enough to float a damn horseshoe. They nodded, still quiet. The young uns, a boy and a girl, they didn't say nothing. Just stood there clinging to their mama's skirts. It was the way they looked at you, though. The wife, she'd smile, a real polite smile, but her eyes would drift off, looking past you, like she was seeing something on the wall behind you that wasn't there. The fella, he mostly kept his head down, but every now and then he'd glance up, a quick dart-in look, then back down again, like he was expecting something to jump out. And then there was the peek-in. The little girl, she'd stand in a doorway, just out of sight, just her eyes peek in around the jam, staring at you with that same fixed smile. Or the husband, he'd be sitting by the fire, but you'd catch him looking over his shoulder, staring at the shadows in the corner. The firelight dancing on the walls, making shapes. They didn't act like they'd just escaped a watery grave. No shivering, no crying, nothing. Just there, and they stayed dry. Even sitting by the fire, their clothes didn't steam, didn't even look damp. It was unnatural. Started with a glance here and there. easy enough to miss. But then it got coordinated, like they'd rehearsed it. I'd be jawing with the fella about the wind, trying to act normal, and then, all at once, the wife and kids, they'd all turn. Every one of them, eyes locked on you for a heartbeat. Then, just as sudden, they'd snap away, looking at the floor or the wall like nothing happened. Creeped me right out, like I'd missed something, like they knew something I didn't. Made the hairs on my neck prickle, I tell you what. Once, I went up to check the lamp, hearing the beam whir and swing out over the black water. When I came back down, they was all just standing there smack dab in the middle of the room, heads tilted back, gazing up at the ceiling. Just staring. Ceiling's just a ceiling, ain't nothing special about it. But they was looking like they seen something I couldn't. Cleared my throat, and their heads snapped down quick like they was pulled by a string. Smiling. That same damn smile that didn't reach their eyes. Like nothing was amiss. My mind was trying to make sense of it, telling me I was just tired seeing things. But that feeling, that cold knot in your gut, that don't lie. I'd seen things out on the water, things you can't explain, but this was different. This felt wrong. It hit me when I saw the little girl walk right through a puddle of seawater on the floor by the door. Didn't even ripple the water. That's when the cold really set in. That's when I knew something wasn't right. Something was deeply, terribly wrong. I'd been watching the wife help the little boy with his coat. Just a normal thing, a mother and her son. But the way she smiled down at him, it was too wide, too fixed. And his eyes, they was looking past her, looking right through her. And something just clicked. That wasn't her. And them weren't her children. Not anymore anyway. Come morning, the wind was done howling. The sea was almost polite. Sun shining like butter wouldn't melt. They were gone. Just gone. I stood there, feeling the silence pressing in. My gaze kept drifting back to the door. Solid. And the bolt. That thick brass bolt, still in place. I know that bolt. Know it like I know my own hands. You gotta be here on this side to slide it across. Feel the click as it locks. There's no reaching it from out there. No way. So how? No wet tracks. Nothing disturbed. Just the memory of their faces. And that damn bolt. Never saw them again. Never heard nothing about a missing family. The sea keeps its secrets, and sometimes it spits things back that ain't what they used to be. So if you're ever caught out in a storm and someone comes to your door looking for shelter, look real close. Especially if they're dry as a bone when they shouldn't be. And if they start staring at the corners of the room, smiling, that empty smile, bolt the door. Let the storm rage. Because sometimes the sea ain't the only thing that washes ashore. It brings other things too. Things you don't want to see. Things that ain't natural.